You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities. The views and comments expressed in this podcast are not necessarily those of the AMAA or our sponsors. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities. Presented by the Adaptive Martial Arts Association, the nation's leading resource and support network for the adaptive martial arts community. Check them out at adaptivemartialarts.org. Breaking barriers, one move at a time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Label. I'm JD.
I'm Charlie Murphy.
Hey, thanks for being back with me again, buddy.
You got it, man. I'm loving it.
Hey, we got an old friend with us here today.
Yes, we do.
From our broadcast days, Tommy Leypoldt. Hey, Tommy, how you doing?
How you doing, fellas? Good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you. Been a long time.
Yeah, it has. I forgot how bossy Jason can be.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm working with over here.
That's right. So our listeners and viewers are probably going, "What is this going to be, like a reminiscing session? Is why did they bring this guy Tommy on?
Maybe it's our show, right?
That's right. We can do whatever we want, and
Right,
nobody can say anything about it. So the deal is that not only is Tommy a fellow veteran broadcaster like you and I, but he's also part of Club CP. So, Tommy, we thought we'd have you on to talk about your life with CP. Give the viewers and listeners a chance to hear your story, and particularly your story intrigues me because of the fact of where you started with your career and where you ended up. And so we want to get into that a little bit. It should be a fun time talking to you. You're, I'm pretty sharp when it comes to the comebackers, but you got me beat by a long shot, so I'm going to have to watch out tonight for sure.
It should be interesting, and I hope you got a time delay on this when you rebroadcast.
No.
This is
wide open, man.
It's
wide open.
Raw, real life look at living with disabilities, Tommy.
Well,
and
all of us understand FCC regulations, so I think we'll be all right.
So just kind of start back to when you were a toddler, I guess. I mean, when did they first realize that you had cerebral palsy, and what was kind of the first kind of things that you had to go through?
I think the story that I've been told was I was being watched. The babysitter was at the house. My parents had to go somewhere, and my parents returned to the house. Babysitter reported to them that I wasn't really mobile. I didn't really go anywhere. I kind of stayed in the same spot for a couple hours. So then my parents were a bit concerned about that, of course. And then they contacted a doctor, and the doctor asked my parents to take a picture of me standing, because I was getting to the age where I was supposed to be standing on my own, and I wasn't. They noticed that I was grabbing furniture and furniture walking. So they sent the picture to the doctor, and the doctor was pretty convinced that I wasn't standing correctly, and it went from there. So by the time I got to first grade, they decided that I would benefit greatly from surgery at Shriners Hospital in Springfield. So I went down there in the spring of '73, had 2 of the heel releases done, which helped quite a bit. I lost a lot of school. So unfortunately, when I got back, even though I was schooled at Shriners, they made me repeat first grade over again. So that kind of delayed a little bit. Then I was fitted with what I call now, just because it's instantly recognizable, as the Forrest Gump braces. They didn't go up as high as what was in the movie. They stopped at my shin. But basically all through my early childhood, I had those on. And then they graduated from there to something they were making out of plastic. I think those were called AFOs. A little bit lighter, but they didn't add quite as much support. As I got older, into my preteens, it was getting more and more difficult, of course, because you're growing, and my muscles were getting more and more constricted. So then we met with a cerebral palsy specialist in New York City, and he recommended that I have a hamstring release to try to give me some more range of motion and a little bit more height. So I actually went, after I talked to him, he recommended a doctor from Bennington, Vermont. So it's worked out quite well. I went down to Bennington just before I turned 18 and had that surgery done. I didn't have to miss any school because he did it over the summer, but I did go through almost my entire senior year on crutches um, till I was strong enough to get under my body weight. And I had crutches here and there, like if I knew I was going to go on in a place where there was going to be a lot of walking, like the fair, Great Escape, or if I was going to be standing for a long time, I would always bring the crutches. But typically now, I tend to lean on things if I think I'm going to be standing too long.
Mm.
I don't like to be caught in a parking lot talking to somebody for too long because you feel like you're on a open range and there's nowhere to go. So I try to watch out for things like that. It's improved greatly. The 2 surgeries that I've had, obviously I work on it. I exercise, I go to the gym, I try to stay in the best shape as I can. There's an old saying that you can't train for strain. So you still have to accommodate for those things. And so I try not to get caught in situations where I'm on my feet for too long, especially if I'm wearing a tuxedo or a suit, because I start to get very hot.
Mm.
Jason, you could probably identify with that, especially if you're in direct sunlight. You tend to get hot.
It's so the thing is that you know, people mean well, I think, Charlie, and they don't even give it a thought. Like you had said a couple episodes ago, once you get to know guys like Tommy and I, we're just guys like everybody else, and so everybody else just kind of hangs out on the street and just chats and whatever. It's like, man, you're killing me here. Can we go sit on that bench?
Right. Right.
Well, how old were you, Jason, when you had the similar surgery, the hamstring release?
Yeah, so I was 10 when I had
10,
the
okay.
hamstring and hip surgery, and I don't know about Tommy, but that was the worst pain of my life. And if anybody tells you anything different, I broke my back in a car accident in '02, and I didn't even know it because the only thing I had to compare pain to was the surgery that I had.
Mm.
So I'm like, hey, this is no big deal, man, compared to where I've been.
Right.
It was the most beneficial surgery that I ever had, but it was the most painful as well. And it worked only because my parents and my mom, especially, were they were dedicated to the exercises that went along with it. Because I've seen some folks that have had that same surgery, and their successes weren't as joyful as yours and mine. As a matter of fact, they ended up probably worse,
Right. Yeah.
for it. But
Do you guys know? I mean, we're talking like 20 and 30 years ago for you guys for this particular surgery. I mean, what are the advances? What is technology like today? Is there other options? Is there other things available now that wasn't available then?
well, it's funny, and so for me to sit here and say, yeah, I know, etc., etc., I don't. But here again, this is what this show is about. So, I just this week, as a matter of fact, I had to go see my CP specialist, and I said, he does other things too, other disabilities and stuff. I said, would you come on and talk about some advancements and how things have changed and things, and so in a few episodes here we'll have an expert on. So I don't even want to begin to speculate. I would
Okay.
have to assume that things are better, unless you know something, Tommy.
Well, I would imagine they are, but I will, for the first time, I'll tell you 2 fellas, I'm actually saving up for an Iron Man suit. So when that becomes affordable, I'm going to be wearing one of those. Seems like that assisted Tony Stark greatly. So that'd be
Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go. Yeah.
get too tired of standing, you could just fly.
Yeah, definitely.
So now you got your start in I guess in the radio biz and the broadcasting business. You went to was it Castleton?
Castleton, yeah,
Castleton would have been State College at the time.
right.
Now Castleton University here in Vermont, and so you graduated with a BA in
A BS in
a
communication.
BS in communications. Okay,
Yeah.
and then from there you started. Were you at the radio station
I actually
in town, or
I actually got my internship at WJGR in 1993, and that's kind of what steered me into the direction of mass media communications because I met Terry J. And I saw how much fun he was having at the station. I saw how people interacted with him. And then I began to see how much of a difference he made in the community. And I thought, man, I would really love to be in a position to do that. Just get involved in media, do things that help the community, just banter. He's really good at banter, as you know. He does it for a living, but uh, I didn't really. I felt comfortable at the station, but you radio guys just get up too early in the morning for me. So I
Yeah.
kind of steered towards television. Um,
Well,
and
we got faces for radio anyway. So.
yeah, it's just too early because Terry did go on vacation while I was there, so I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning and record the weathers. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not no way. Plus, I sound grumpy in the morning, so it
Yeah.
wouldn't have sounded well on the air. So
It's going to be cold and snowy. You're good
yeah,
for like 6 months with that report. So just put that
yeah,
one in the can. And then, so from there, you went over to television and at Peg TV.
yeah. I finished the internship in '93, graduated in '94, and actually during all that time, I was volunteering at Pay TV, so I was getting to know that trade fairly well. I met Mike Valentine in 1988 in a boxing class, so him and I already knew each other. And I saw in the paper that an ad had come up for they were looking for some production assistants part time. So I just jumped on that and applied for it, and Michael hired me. And soon after, it went into a full time position. And lo and behold, 26 years later, I'm the executive director. I certainly do miss Michael. It was very unfortunate in the
Yeah.
way that we lost him, but I was very pleased that the powers that be decided that I would be the next in line to replace him, since we pretty much built the Peg TV that you know today. Um, it would have been hard for me to be in that role under somebody else's leadership. So I'm very happy to be there today. And emulate Terry J. I get to talk to people every day. We get to make programming, much like you radio guys. We make programming that helps the community. So I get to meet people and be out there and make TV shows. It's a lot of fun.
So Tommy, I want to take it back just a little bit. So when you first got into radio, I know when I got in, and like we said, this is a raw, real life look at life with a disability. And so,
Right.
through high school, I had some part time jobs. I did all that stuff. Um, College wasn't my career path. I was going to go find a job. Thought it would be pretty easy. Was basically told, long story short, that I was unemployable and useless and should go to the mailbox and collect a check each month. And said, no, that's not for me. I'm gonna do something. And what I ended up finding about the workforce, though, was it was very much different from those part-time jobs. This was sort of the big time, and people were sort of seeing the disability first, and me second. And there were some things that I thought I was suited for, but you don't really realize it until you're there doing it. It's like, oh well, my dexterity is not very good, so I'm not going to be putting widgets into holes. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, it was kind of a tough go in the workforce. Were people pretty accepting of you, or was there still that apprehension there that comes with having a disability sometimes?
I think, I've experienced a lot of the same situations that you have. And I felt that too. I felt that was there. Um, Same situation where my mom was actually collecting disability for me because I was young and I hadn't entered the workforce yet. And I had a couple part-time jobs. My first real job was in the garage. I was a light duty mechanic, which I enjoyed very much. I had a very understanding boss who let me, accommodated me. So, when I needed to sit down, he let me, and I did the things that I was capable of doing. And but I ran into a problem once I got into retail because I got a job at the record store in the original Old Rutland Mall. And I enjoyed that very much, except for the part where you're on your feet putting stock away. I did have trouble with that, but there was countertops and bins to lean on, and So I kind of made my way. You know, there were some days when it was excruciating, and I couldn't wait for the day to end to get completely off my feet. But I did that for a while and basically making minimum wage. And then I got offered the position of assistant manager, which I wanted to take, so I did take it. And then I get this letter from disability saying you're making too much money. There's a certain limit of how much you can make, and you're either going to have to stop the disability because now we recognize that you can earn a substantial, and I'll say that kind of sarcastically, a substantial living wage. You know, I'm an assistant manager at the mall. It's not like I was going to be building any mansions here, but so I was faced with a very difficult decision to make because I wanted to stay in the workforce, but losing that disability check was going to put a tremendous burden on my mom and myself. My mom was working, but we certainly weren't bringing a lot of money into the household, and we were dependent on that. It was very hard. It was a very hard decision to make. I actually tried to work out something like, is there any way you can kind of do a sliding scale where I can earn whatever income I earn? You kind of deduct that from the check, but we still get the check. And for some reason, that was never viable. You either make a certain amount or you don't, and there's no compassion or no mathematics or no formula. So I decided, you know, this is going to be hard, but I do not want to be chained to this for the rest of my life where I have to worry about I can't take a promotion or I can't do this because I'm worried about losing my check. And also the apprehension of, well, what if I do lose the check and I actually can't make it in the workforce and I can't stay on my feet for long periods of time and I don't find something that's going to keep me sustained where I can make a living at it. But I just said, you know, heck with it. No matter what I decide, it's going to be hard. So if it's going to be hard, I'm going to be hard on my own, and I'm not going to have to worry about reporting my wages or telling people I can't take the promotion. So I bit the bullet, and it was the hardest period of my life because it taxed my mom and it taxed me, and it just was basically doing the best we can to stay above the fray. And it was like that for a couple of years, but I managed to get through college. Constantly worried about, well, if I get this degree, am I going to be able to find a job? Every kid worries about that, but I think Jason, there with you and me, there's a little bit of a different thing there because you can't fall back on ditch digging. You know,
No,
we're not going to be jackhammer operators. We're not going to get a job at a construction site. So you're in that way, it's fearful.
you know,
But
I think Tommy, for me, I mean, I had to come to the real because I had been so used to doing whatever I wanted, like finding a way to do it. That was the first realization was for me was like, you know, the workforce isn't as open to you as you might think it is. So that was a pretty big blow. And then, you know, you talk about dealing with Social Security and all these years later, I mean, I'm still dealing with this today, and it's like everybody's like, well, why don't you just go off your benefit? And it's like, well, it's not that simple because you know, like there are some days, and it's no secret, Charlie, but in case you haven't figured it out, I mean, I look pretty good for my age, but I am getting older.
No, I've seen it.
And so it's a little tougher, and so you worry about, you know, well, what if I physically can't go to
Right.
work that day because I'm just exhausted, or what if, you know, like when I get sick with a common cold, probably like you, Tommy. I mean, it's most people 2 or 3 days. For us, it hangs in there a little longer, and it's a little bit tougher. And you know, one bad day, you could burn through all your sick time, and then what do you do? You know,
Right.
and so there's a lot of considerations to make, and I think, um, as far as it goes, I mean, I got involved in a program where they were trying out a new system where they were similar to what you were talking about. You know, they're going to take $1 for every two that you made over SGA or the substantial gainful amount.
Mm.
And I did that, and I actually ended up getting myself in a jam for being a part of that program. So it's a real, unless you understand it, unless you're living it, you'll never understand what it's like to have to balance safety with wanting to be a productive member of society.
Right. That is correct. And it's risk taking. Everybody takes risks in life, but there's extra things we have to consider when you take that risk, because you do have um, limitations put on you that weren't up to you, that you have no control over. And when you have something bearing down on you, and obviously I'm talking to you guys, so this is not any kind of a pity thing, but when you have something bearing down on you constantly, that changes things. It changes things, how you make decisions. It makes you question, well, I want to take this, but am I capable of it? So when Michael offered me the job, there's something in the back of my head. Well, I hope I can stand behind the camera for long periods of time. I hope I can carry the set equipment when I need to. So that went all through there. And I always had this feeling that it was going to be temporary. Like, I'm going to try this for a while and then move on to something else or go back to retail. But I was fortunate to be around some compassionate people that made adjustments for me, and it didn't make it easier, but it made it less difficult, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha.
So media was a good place for me to get into. A lot of times you're sitting behind the control booth, which was great because you still got to be in it, but you're not on your feet. And then, like I said, I had no idea when I graduated from college that I was actually going to be working at a TV station. I was scared still. But I said to myself, if I do anything, I'm going to get a college degree. So at least I can say I did that. And, I just didn't give up. I just kept looking and making contacts. But I'm still worried, like you, I'm getting older and I still think about it. So instead of being a teenager with cerebral palsy, now I'm a 55-year-old with cerebral palsy. And I'm hoping that I can make it to retirement without any problems that are going to impede me, so I can't go to work, or I do get sick and something happens. But you learn to live with that. I mean, you've learned to live with that. I've learned to live with that. I have it on my mind a lot, but I try not to let it overshadow opportunities.
Tommy, I want to get into this a little bit deeper because there is a lot to cover here and a lot of good information. I think there are a lot of people, our audience out there that are kind of feeling what we're talking about, and they're brand new at it. So I do want to dig into this a little bit deeper. I want to talk about what a typical day is for you, and then what is your after hours day like? I mean, how does that go? But first, I think we got to take care of a little bit of business, huh, Charlie?
Yeah. We're going to just cut away for a minute. You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by the Adaptive Martial Arts Association, the nation's leading resource and support network for the adaptive martial arts community. AdaptiveMartialArts.org, breaking barriers one move at a time.
Beyond the Label, presented by the Adaptive Martial Arts Association, the nation's leading resource and support network for the adaptive martial arts community.
It's no secret, every martial artist, no matter their age, dreams of becoming a legend. Having their name listed among the greats like Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, and Jackie Chan. You can hide it or deny it, but you know it's true. Being a legend takes raw talent, dedication, big breaks, and an ability to survive a roller coaster called fame. But it also takes one more thing to go with it: the best gear and equipment in the world. From the company that is martial arts, Century Martial Arts. They aren't just another martial arts supplier that's never set foot on a mat. They are martial artists, and that means they know their products and use what they sell. From uniforms and training gear to weapons and equipment, Century has it all for every martial arts style. Although you may never be listed among the greats, you can still shop like one at CenturyMartialArts.com and unleash your legend within. Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976.
You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by the Adaptive Martial Arts Association. Check them out at AdaptiveMartialArts.org.
Welcome back to Beyond the Label. I'm JD.
I'm Charlie Murphy, and we're joined by our special guest, Tom Leypoldt. He is the executive director at PEG TV and a stand-up comedian.
Correct.
And I got to tell you, I went on the other day and I was watching an old, from I think it was like 2015. It was a really big show or whatever it was, and you were going to be one of the judges there, and you came out and you started talking about growing up in Danby, and I'm almost falling out of my chair because I'd forgotten how goddamn funny you are.
Oh,
And
thanks, Charlie.
and
Appreciate
I
that.
saw you there, and I also saw you perform once over at St. Bridget's over in West Rutland for a talent show over there.
Yeah.
Great stuff, hilarious, and yeah, no, you're to be commended.
Oh, thanks.
It's something that I've always wanted to try to do, and I don't know if maybe just the opportunity kind of never came up, or I never pursued it enough. But I want to do a bit. I want to do it up in front of people, and after I did all this thinking, I saw where last year you put together something for Peg TV, some sort of talent, kind of a virtual talent thing or something like that
Right. Yeah, because of the, obviously because
because of the
pandemic,
COVID, right? Yeah.
and all those events that I normally take part in got canceled, and it affected me. It affected once you're a performer in that sense, and a musician or whatever, um, that bothered me that people weren't able to express themselves with their art forms or their talent in front of people. And I knew there was other people out there that felt the same way, that just wanted to get out in front of an audience. So we put the call out, just perform something and send it in, and we'll play it on New Year's Eve. And it was fun. We got a lot of stuff in, and it was fun to watch. It was very entertaining, actually. And I hope we can get back to where people can do it in front of a live audience, because there's nothing that can compare to that. But I appreciate the compliment, but I still don't feel like I'm funny enough to quit my day job.
So I gotta have you do it. I gotta have you do it. One of my favorite Tommy jokes is about the sneakers. You know the one I'm talking about?
Is that the one where I can put them on the wrong feet and they still fit comfortably?
Yeah. So can you tell the joke from its beginning to end for us?
Geez, you got me on the spot. What's the beginning of it?
So what's life like with C, or what are the positives of having CP, or
Right,
such,
and that's
thing?
one in a string of jokes, right? And now they're not coming to me. I'm rusty, but yeah, it was that you could put your shoes on the wrong feet and they still fit comfortably. Something about getting good parking spots all the time. Yeah.
That's this guy.
I was finding, like, like, so for a lot of people, and we've talked about this on the show before. It's like, I'll make jokes about myself. You'll make jokes about me, and I'll laugh and things. But when people don't know, right, they tend to get really squirmy. And so I'm up there and I'm running sound with Terry J at this event, and Tommy's doing his bit, right, and he goes into the shoe bit, right, and you can see people getting, like, really uncomfortable. Yeah, you know what? Some pluses of having CPR, and they're just like, and he gives the punchline, and they're just like, they're trying not to laugh. They're not sure if they should laugh.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. Yeah, you
And
laugh.
I'm going like, yeah, it's finally somebody's calling this stuff out. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And so what is your opinion of that? I mean, there's a lot of political correctness around disabilities and things like that. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, you can't. I've been brought up like you, with parents that really cared about the situation that I was faced with. They didn't coddle me at all. My mom was very kind and compassionate. My father was very kind and compassionate, but my father also was very matter of fact, and he got me ready for what I was going to face, not for how he wanted the world to treat me. He got me ready for how I was going to get treated. And one of the first lessons that he taught me and that I learned quickly was, you can't take it personal. You just can't. You got to take the cards that you're dealt with and play the best hand you can without taking it personal. And my dad had a fantastic sense of humor. He could make strangers laugh on a subway. And growing up around that, I think I gleaned that attitude from my dad. And he started to say funny things here and there. Of course, like your dad can get away with anything, and he's always the funniest guy in the room. And, I just started to repeat some of those things in front of my friends as I got older, and my friends thought it was funny. And, it's kind of like you kept it to your own little close circle. When my circle started getting bigger and people started saying, well, that's actually really funny. And you might want to consider going on stage and trying it out. And that's how it happened. I just went to an open mic night one time at a bar in Rutland, and a very close friend of mine who happened to be working there that night, and she came up to me and said, "I'll buy you a beer if you get up and tell one joke." And I didn't even have anything planned, but because it was that particular girl, I just went up and did it.
Yeah, you did.
I turned around, didn't have a thing I'm going to say, but I said something, and I don't really remember what it was, but I did notice that I didn't kill, but I also got a few chuckles here and there. And then I thought to myself, boy, if I was prepared for this, I might be able to do it better. So then I just went home and started writing down everything I said that made people laugh. And I tried to put it in some kind of a context that made people comfortable with laughing at it. Because that's the trick to stand-up comedy. Anything can be funny, but you have to put it in the right context where people feel comfortable laughing at it, because cerebral palsy in and of itself is not funny at all. So the technique is to put it in a package that people feel like it's okay to laugh. And you can tell those jokes, Jason, and I could tell those jokes because obviously we've lived through it, and we have a certain privilege and a few stripes on our arms where like, oh, it's okay, it's Jason saying that, and he thinks it's funny, so we can think it's funny too. And it just came from there. And one of the things that I'm very thankful about stand-up comedy was it helped me a lot with the social aspect of it, especially today, because with the whole dynamic of you can't say this, you can't say that, or I'm offended and this bothers me. And I don't live like that. I give people a break, even if they do say the wrong thing to me, because people do. I hear things like, how long have you been crippled? Did you get in a car accident? Do you have polio? I'm sure you've heard the whole gamut,
Can you walk without those crutches?
Right.
That
Okay.
came from a federal employee, but
Right.
that's besides the point.
Yeah. And I mean, and you have to kind of I'm always ready for whatever situation. And sometimes I talk back with a joke just to try to evade, because you'll know this, Jason, typically what tends to happen is, and this is one of my favorite ones. And somebody will say, "Do you have polio?" And I said, "No, I actually have cerebral palsy." "Oh, I'm sorry, I stand corrected." And I say, "Oh, I wish I could stand corrected."
Or correct.
Yeah, and what that does is it staves off the uncomfortable moment where a person apologizes to you, because that's uncomfortable to me when someone asks you and you tell them and then they apologize. That's an uneasy moment for me.
What do you what do you think? What do you think that our approach to this? What do you think that does for the for the inclusive movement? I mean, does it actually make things better, or are we actually making things worse, but thinking we're funny as we're doing this?
Well, I think it is funny, and I think that it actually puts people at ease. If you can make someone laugh, if they put their guard down, you put your guard down, and there's a bridge there. Um, so even if they do say the wrong thing, if I come back to them with the correct answer with a little bit of spin on it, they'll be like, "Hey, this guy's not so bad," and maybe I had the wrong viewpoint of this fella. I may have misjudged. Because it's not my job to make people understand. If you have a deep-seated misunderstanding about my condition, it's not up to me to fix that. We can make a connection if you want, but I'm not going to go out of my way to try to change how you feel. Comedy has let me try that out on a greater scale, because could be up to 200 people or more in the audience. I have been approached before where I think someone will say your sense of humor is too dark, or I didn't think you're funny. Somebody wrote a letter to the editor once saying that I was crass and abrasive. But if you're gonna perform right, yeah, and I cut it out and put it on my scrapbook. So
I was gonna say that means you made it, man.
yeah, I think people are getting a bit uptight over too many things, because you can't go through life taking it that serious. You do the best you can, you try as hard as you can. You can't take it that serious. If somebody says something that is a little off or wrong, Do your best to say, well, kind of not like that, but this is really how it is. Because when I was at Shriners, it actually said Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children on the
Mm,
side of the building.
right.
I never saw any shame in that word. Sometimes people say it with a little bit of zing on it. I'm like, oh, I wonder what your intent is. Are you curious? Are you trying to hurt me? Or what are you trying to start something? So it all depends on what the person's intent is. And I think that's being missed today. People are so quick to jump to that offends me or that bothers me. You have to look at what the person's intent is, because a guy that the veteran of World War II, if he says, hey, how long have you been crippled? Well, that's what they used to say back in his day. So he may be perfectly genuine, want to know what my story is. And I could alienate him by getting all huffy and say, oh, that's not what you say. That's not how you do it. So I tend to look at that, and it doesn't bother me if people are agitated by me or they think I'm not supposed to be there or I somehow got privileged and things got handed to me because I got cerebral palsy. Um, I'll tell you one another quick one. I was at the post office one day and there was a line of people waiting for their mail and waiting to speak to the postal clerk. And there was a fella standing in front of me that I could tell wasn't quite up to the same speed as everybody else. Um, and he turns around and looks at me. He goes, what did you do? Get hit by something? And of course, he said it loud enough that everybody standing in line turns around to see what he's talking about. And they're all looking at me. And so to deflect and put some levity into it, I looked back at him. I said, no, did you get hit by something? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, because you're about to. And everyone in the line got it except for him. So it's really funny. So, but I'll tend to explain, especially children. One of the things that really kind of irked me growing up, and you've had this too, where kids will ask you, what's wrong with you or what happened to you? With kids, sometimes it's bullying and sometimes it's just genuine curiosity. And it was hard when we were both kids because you feel alienated on the playground because you can't do what the other kids are doing. But now when kids ask me, I try to,
Tommy, you got that problem too. I just heard your email go off in the background, and I ended up on the ceiling, and Charlie's over here laughing. That's just
yeah,
that's the CP, man. Sorry.
it's telling me to dismiss this meeting, but I don't want to. But, parents will sometimes tell their kids they're not supposed to ask people questions like that. And I always wondered why. Because kids just want to know. They're, most of the time kids just want to know, and they're not necessarily saying it to be mean. So,
Yeah, no, it's for me, it was always like, I get a charge out of the little kids looking, I think that's cute. But like when once you're past, 10, 12 and you start looking, it's like, dude, got a problem? Like, what's your problem? You want to know something? Come ask me. Don't,
yeah,
take a picture. It'll last longer,
yeah,
bro. Um,
yeah.
I do want to back up though for a minute, and talk about the workforce again. As we always say, the best stuff happens during the break, and we got chatting, and the best stuff did happen during the break. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but I also want to find out, broadcasting. When I got into broadcasting, I thought, man, this is a job for me. You work 4 hours a day, you go home, it's nice and easy, you're on the radio, you're like a local celebrity, everybody knows you. Like, I'm gonna do that. Well, lo and behold, I got in there, and first off, I had to climb a flight of stairs every day to do what I wanted to do because it's where the radio station was, and I was okay with that. But one of my first interactions with anybody at the radio station was like, and I grew up kind of like in school. I had some difficulties with learning disabilities and stuff, and really academics wasn't my thing, and I was pretty much a punk kid and really didn't care what I was going to do after graduation. And once I got the job at the radio station and struggled a little bit to find a job, yeah, I was like, it's time to grow up. And so I was really dedicated. Like, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be my career. I'm going to retire here. And one of my first interactions with anybody at the radio station, I said, hi, my name's Jason Davis, and I'm going to, I want to be around. Well, you don't look like much to me, and you're probably not going to be around very long. And we don't know. I said I want to be on the air. Well, we don't know. You sound different. It just doesn't sound good, and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I want to do it, and it's So I got some of that from the inside, and I just kept using that as my fire to just stay there and stick it out.
Right.
And
Basically,
and
be a pain in the ass, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so it was 20 years later, and
Mhm.
I'm still there, right? And I'm
Right.
like, hey, uh, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, but you're back to visit or something? Oh yeah, no, I'm back. Just thought I would come and see how things were going. So I thought I was the guy that wasn't supposed to be around long. Looks like I outlasted you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of what that was my
Right.
answer to
Well,
their sarcasm. But I mean, did you face some of that same stuff? Like, well, you don't sound so good on the air, and maybe you should think about doing something else, et cetera, et cetera. And what I found from that was, being on the air wasn't my strong point. I did enjoy it, but I also realized that CP affected more than my legs. It affected my whole body, my diaphragm, and that was why I was having some issues. But I also found that I was like extraordinary in production. I could hear things and do things that most people couldn't. And I finally realized that I needed to pay attention to the gift that I was given and put my focus on that. Did you have that same?
pretty similar. I actually, at WJJR, I had a salesperson tell me that I wasn't a good talker, which is an honest account because uh, fatigue can affect the sound of your voice, and I experience fatigue often, and that's probably you'll feel the same way. One of the biggest misconceptions is sometimes people think you're moody when you're actually tired, and that I guess that does make you moody at times. And um, so yeah, I mean, I didn't feel I was comfortable behind the microphone for an extended period of time because you do get kind of tired at it, and but yeah, I mean, people misjudge me. It's normal to do that, I guess, to some extent, because you have to kind of prove yourself, like you did, Jason. You have to kind of stick it out and prove yourself. Michael Jordan got rejected a few times. The Beatles failed their first audition or whatever. The guy Decca Records said the guitar bands are on their way out or something like that. You got to prove yourself. You got to just stick with it. And if it's your passion, it's going to come out, and your passion's eventually going to get recognized. And you have to circumvent and get around those obstacles any way you can. And I think that fosters creativity. When you're faced with something that other people take for granted, you start to figure out other ways. You look at things differently. And I think that's why you're so good at production, because you can see the fastest, easiest way to get something done that's creative. If you need the shortest route to somewhere, ask someone with cerebral palsy. They'll tell you the quickest way, because it's the least amount of walking. That's why we don't
Right.
have
And
parades, because there's too much walking.
it's it was tough to swallow at first, because I was really like you. I mean, I was busting my ass to
Yeah,
to make it, and
yeah,
and I was trying to be different, and I was trying to be mature, and people were still just counting me out. And I finally said, you know what, um I'm gonna do this no matter what. And then it became around about the time that Charlie came. I got some of this other thing where you'd been there for 20 years, and everybody was like, you're not going anywhere because you couldn't get a job somewhere else. And Charlie knew that day when I was told on the balcony you couldn't get a job somewhere else, that was probably a mistake,
yeah,
Yeah.
because it wasn't short. It was short after that I got a job somewhere else. I wasn't good at it. I didn't particularly care for it, but I was challenged in the fact that I couldn't find myself another job. So I did. And then I started this organization, and I had some disabled agencies say, it's never going to work. You don't know anything about helping people with disabilities. Nobody's going to support you. And I said, okay, well, thanks. Let's
yeah.
go ahead and go forth with this. So I think just don't get upset just use that as your fire to go forward. That's what I do.
Right.
And that's part of the reason I'm doing the podcasting, is because both Charlie and I still enjoy broadcasting. I enjoy helping other folks with disabilities and people in general. So, what better way to marry those two things together than this podcast?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when I think the conversation that you guys were having about the whole, trying to collect disability and yet at the same time be a member of the workforce and having to juggle all that. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know that that goes on, and
Yeah.
and that there's just a fine line between making it or breaking it,
Right.
and an agency that should be helping you. It's not always the
Yeah, I
case,
know.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. Yeah, that was tough. I mean, talk about a tough audition. Is try to make that decision where you got a position in the workforce that you want to take, but you're on the verge of not making enough with that job. You can actually make more staying on disability, but you want to get into the workforce. And if you make too much in the workforce, they pull the disability away from you, and it just leaves you in the a rock and a hard place. That's
yeah, right,
exactly a perfect example of a rock and a hard place. Um, and even if you're not making a lot of money, if you work for a long enough period of time, they consider that substantial gainful employment. And I don't know who came up with the definition of how that gets uh, uh, said, but it's not really doesn't really apply because it takes a long time to get to a point where you're actually making enough to sustain yourself. Um, so making that decision, I
yeah,
didn't make that decision because I just said, if it's going to be hard, I'm going to make it hard on my own terms. It's going to be hard no matter what. So I made the jump, got off the disability, and just entered the workforce. I made lousy wages for a long time. I lived with my mom into my 20s. And I finally started to climb the ladder. I got the degree. I met Mike Valentine. I got hired at Peg TV part time. But again, never knowing that this was going to actually happen.
right,
Um,
right,
so you have to get lucky, but you have to be prepared to get lucky. And I was just prepared to be lucky, and I got lucky. That's how I looked at it. I was ready to get lucky. A lot of times you're ready to get lucky and you don't get lucky, and that's where the fear comes into play. And I was worried about the job at Peg TV because you're standing behind the camera for long periods of time. Um, Mike was very compassionate, and they made adjustments for me when I needed it. There were times when we were at the Halloween parade, I had to get up on scaffolding, and
no, yeah,
always worried. I mean, always worried about it constantly. And it took me a long time to realize that I got this job and I'm staying here, and nothing's going to happen, and it's going to be fine. And you almost become conditioned to think that you don't deserve a full-time job. You don't deserve to make it on your own. And I felt like early on with the disability thing, they were actually trying to steer me on to staying on disability. It was a very, very tough decision, and I hope I never have to make another decision like that again for the rest of my life. And I don't. I get approached frequently. Folks will ask me, "How do you manage to work full time and collect disability?" Which is an honest question, and I don't fault people for thinking that. But I tell them I don't. I don't collect disability, but I can't recommend to them to do what I did
yeah,
because
right,
the luck is not in your control. It's always anytime you're going to apply for a job, disability or not, there's always a little bit of luck involved or a lot of luck involved, and you can't control that. No amount of preparation can control what decision that person on the other side of the table makes. And if 35 other people with the same degree that I had apply for the job, I'm thinking to myself, well, why wouldn't they just hire somebody that doesn't have cerebral palsy? Because then they don't have to worry about any mishaps or whether or not they can stand up for
mm,
long periods of time. Um, but I did my best to network. I did my best to put on a good face. Um, I got out in the community. Jason, you're into mixed martial arts. I got into boxing. That's where I met Mike, who eventually ended up hiring me. So it's important to get out there and just network, make connections, and find that person that sees your ability, sees what you're made of, because that's what it takes. And especially with cerebral palsy, you and I are both affected in some ways similarly, but in other ways very differently. So we can't really compare, for lack of a better term, suffering. I can't compare my suffering to yours in many respects because we're on different levels of cerebral palsy. I joke sometimes that I got nicked by the bullet. You can tell that I have cerebral palsy, but in many other ways, I'm very capable. My upper body is immensely strong. I was fairly good at boxing because I like the idea of having an able-bodied person stuck in a confined area with me. So, yeah,
Well,
psychologically, it was very difficult, and the battle psychologically, it was sometimes harder than the physical battle.
and it's for me, and people will look at you when you say this. I do a lot of motivational speeches, and I'll say, I feel fortunate to have what I have. It's allowed me to do so many things and change so many lives. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, like CP runs such a wide gamut of effectiveness that you and I are the lucky ones, Tommy. I mean, really, at the end of the day, we better be thanking our stars because it
Yeah.
could have been a lot worse.
Oh, yeah.
And it's I think the toughest part is, like you said, is believing that you got where you got because you got there because of your ability, not your disability, and
Right.
and that somebody felt like you were you were a charity case and they were being nice to you. So I think guys like you and I mean, we go the extra mile to make sure that's not the case. And sometimes I was told the other day, dude, your 100% is like way overboard. Like ratchet it back to 70, and you'll be like playing with the rest of the
Yeah.
playing with the rest of the kids.
Yeah.
But I think we have to like we have to do that. And I said before on this podcast, I feel like it's our obligation to teach people about disabilities and to give them what life is really like. And so that brings me to my next question for you, Tommy. And before we close this out, I mean, what is your, we know you as Tommy at Peg TV, and it's like, does he live there? Does he sleep there? Because that's what we always see. But what's life for Tommy like outside of Peg TV, first of all, and then what's life for Tommy like outside of CP? And what I mean by that is, I have some times where I kind of get disconnected from it, and one of those is martial arts, and the other is when I'm working out. So what is that like for you, or what are your releases?
Well, in that way, you and I are extremely similar. Um, I get out of work. Typically, I go to the gym, I work out. On a nice day, I have a mountain bike. Fortunately, I have enough mobility and strength to just get on that and go riding. I love that. And it's beneficial and because it strengthens my legs. And so it does I get in a little better shape in the summertime. So it makes me feel good about that. Um, no, I enjoy the same things you do. I like the combat sports. I watch that on TV. I don't get in the ring anymore, but I'm still very passionate about boxing. I went to the Hall of Fame. I met Sylvester Stallone. You got a chance to meet Mike Tyson. I was very jealous of that because I couldn't get near him. He had some bodyguards that were more rugged looking than he was. So,
Neither could Charlie. He's still very upset.
Yeah, I'll have to show you the picture of me with Mike Tyson.
Yeah, the bodyguards dragging you out the door.
Oh man.
Tell me that. How did you actually get that close to him?
So we were actually in a restaurant, and this guy is a joker, right? I mean, he's a joker. Charlie.
Yeah.
So we walk into this restaurant, and it's a hangout for the boxers. They're kind of like that's where they go to be left alone, right?
It's Graziano's right there.
Oh, yeah,
right across,
right there.
right across the street from the Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, New York. In case you folks don't know where that is, put it on your list on some place you got to go and check out because it's pretty amazing.
Very cool.
So we go walking through the door, and I say, "Hey, there's Mike Tyson," and Jason's like, "No." And Katie's like, "No." His wife is. They're both just and Jason takes a couple more steps in the door. He goes, "Hey, there's Mike Tyson." It's like, yeah. So we ended up sitting at a table, pretty much right behind his, and we're just kind of hanging out, and you could kind of see that, people were wanting to approach him, but they thought, well, I'm not gonna. He's having dinner, and let's leave him
Yeah.
alone and stuff. And every once in a while, somebody would kind of go over, and one of his guys would say, not now. Let's just let Mike be Mike. And well, Jason had his adaptive martial arts hats that he had with him, and he wanted to give one to Iron Mike. And I was like, well, let's just go over there. What are they going to do? I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
they're going to tell us no, or they're going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
So we went over there, and Jason said, hey, champ, I wanted to give you this hat. And he kind of told him his story real quick. And Mike is he's sitting there just real quiet and listening to everything Jason is saying. And it was
Nice.
it was a very, very cool thing,
That's
and he
nice.
really he didn't say anything. He was just kind of listening. And at one point, what,
He said to me, he said, you just keep on doing what you're doing. He says, you keep making a difference. He said, and one of these days this thing will take off. He said, he says, I appreciate you for what you're doing, and God bless you, and things like that. And so for me, I mean, growing up in the 80s, it was just, if you had that same experience with this man, you'd say, dude, that's a classy guy, because he
Yeah,
really, really just was a class act. And
right.
what you see in the ring, I mean, that's because that's go time, and it's
yeah.
and
I want to eat your children.
you
Yeah,
know
No,
right.
he doesn't want to
There
eat
you
your
challenge me with
children.
your primitive skills.
it's like, and I guess guys like you and me and Charlie that have been in the broadcast business, we understand. And so I when I first went up, I went to his security guard. I said, look, I know you get this all the time. I said, so if you want to tell me to go back and sit down, I'll respect that. I'll go back and sit down. I said, but I'd like the opportunity to just kind of introduce myself, tell him what I've got. And he said, sure. He said, and then before you knew it, like, I felt so bad. And even to this day, I feel pretty bad, because then after that, it was like an explosion, and everybody was
Yeah,
like,
because he
Yeah,
got up
you
and he
open
was
the
talking to the
floodgates.
yeah, because he was talking to the champ. Everybody thought, oh, this is our opportunity to
Yeah,
kind of ask him for an autograph or whatever, and
right.
and they kind of squashed that pretty quick. But so I said, hey, let me get a picture of you guys, and Mike he comes right up to Jason, puts his arm around him, just got a great picture, and I was
I
like,
saw it.
now take my picture.
Yeah, I almost unfriended you when I saw that picture.
But we had a lot of great experiences with a lot of guys out there. Um, it's just a very, very cool place. You've been
It
out
is.
there, and
Yeah.
just being able to talk to some of these guys. Pernell Whitaker, meeting him the year before he died tragically. Getting to meet Marvelous Marvin Hagler several times, and now
Right.
he's no longer with
Right.
us. It's
Yeah.
just it's sad that a lot of these guys don't live very long,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the profession they chose, and a lot of these guys have made a lot of money doing that, but it's a dangerous sport,
Yeah.
and God bless them.
Well,
it's
I'm glad that I participated in this sport. And you probably heard of Mr. Garrow, Tommy Garrow. He was my first boxing coach, and he took me in. He didn't care about the disability. He saw I was passionate about boxing, and he let me participate. And he taught me. But he did eventually tell me that this is not a career path for you. This is something you should just do for enjoyment. And now I think back on it, like, I took shots to the head. I worry about that now as I get older. I'm like, man, I really, my whole defense was take a couple to give
Yeah,
one, take three or
sure.
four to give one. And that was effective for me. But when you're young, that's fine. But now that I'm older, I'm like, geez, I wonder if that voice I hear in my head is because of that punch.
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know?
it's
and Tommy, to that, I mean, like, I found martial arts, and it helped me with my disability. How did the boxing help you, or
Uh,
did it?
that actually, it was probably the same as you. It just felt great. It just felt great to be in there throwing punches. It felt great to be in shape. It felt great to be part of it. I mean, I never won any titles or anything, but meeting Mr. Garrow and being able to work with a legend like that, meeting all the other, I got to ride in the van and go see the Golden Gloves with all those fellas, some long-lasting friendships. Cal Joslin, he still cuts my hair to this day. And like what you were saying before about how outside of cerebral palsy, I do have to tell you that when I step on stage to do a comedy show, I feel completely like I don't even have it when I walk out there, and it's a kind of control. It's like a challenge for me. Like if I can get this audience, if I can win this audience over and get them to laugh at this thing that's in and of itself is not funny at all, I feel like I don't have it after that. I feel like when I come off stage, it's gone. It's an amazing feeling, because then people come up to me after and say, that was fantastic. You made me laugh. I never, could imagine that you could do that in that sort of way. And it's scary. It's still scary to this day to walk out and talk about things that affected you personally and cause you pain. But when people recognize that you're sharing that in a way that makes it okay to laugh at, and I generally feel like it's lifted from me after I do a good show. It's an amazing feeling.
One more quick one for you, Tommy, and we got to run, and I guess this quick one is for selfish reasons. I mean, I'm a guy that's going to be 43 here in a little bit. I'm trying to figure it out. I got some injuries from pushing myself for so long, that are creeping up on me, overuse injuries, things like that. Just trying to figure it out, and there's no real answers for me. It's like, well, we don't really know, because like before you guys, like people with CP were put in an institution, or
Right.
or they were, things were different, and so we can't really tell you what your next 10 years is going to be, and what your next 20 years is going to be, and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. You got a little bit on me. I mean, what would your advice be?
I have a sliding scale in my head, so I'll share that with you. So being 43, that's like 62 in cerebral palsy years.
It's like dog years, right?
Yeah. So, and then once people tell you like, hey, Jason, you look great, and say, well, you haven't seen my x-rays. That's how you answer people. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I look at it. One of my greatest inspirers in the fame world was Muhammad Ali. Not only because what he did in the ring and outside the ring, but as he got older, of course, he had Parkinson's bearing down on him. And when I saw him light that Olympic torch in 1996, I said, he's pushing it to the limit. He's got all this stuff bearing down on him. He's having trouble with it. He's not ashamed that it's visible, and I'm just going to do that. I don't care how much of a wreck I become. I'm just going to do the best I can with it and not worry about what people think, and just do the best I can. That's the only advice I can give. And I look to that every time I feel like it's getting to be too much, or I feel like I'm getting old, or I'm worried about what's going to happen. I might trip and fall down some steps. I'm not going to waste time worrying about that. If it happens, it happens. You got inner strength, amazing inner strength to be doing what you do, and just use that. Just say, it may happen one day where I can't do it, but today I'm going to do it. And just say that to yourself every day. That's what I do.
Well, thank
Nice.
you for being here tonight with us, Tommy. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, quickly, tell us a little bit about PEG TV, what it's about, where people can tune in and catch programming there.
Yeah, we're PEG TV is last May, 2 Mays ago, Comcast moved us to channel 1075, 1085, and 1095. So we're a little bit out of what people are used to, but we're the public access entity in Rutland County. So if anybody's got a good idea for a nonprofit venture, they just want to come in and speak their mind, that's essentially what we are. We're a conduit of freedom of speech. We cover the select board meetings, the school board meetings, and alderman meetings. And the Halloween parade is a go right now, so we're planning on covering that live. So please tune in for that. Yeah.
And what about our viewers and listeners that are in other parts of the country and other parts of the world? Can they still check out PEG TV?
Yep, pegtv.com, and we have a YouTube channel that you'll find if you Google anything that has to do with PEG TV. You'll find us on YouTube. And Charlie's got one of the vintage hats there prior to the logo change. So
Yeah,
that's
old school.
You may
Nice.
see that on eBay one day, right,
I
Charlie?
have to get a new one, apparently.
Well, we will have to give you a new one. We got
Yeah,
a new
I know a guy.
Yeah, you do. I got baseball caps and handicaps.
Nice.
So I told you this guy was right. So before we go though, I think we would be we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't quickly tell people about the world famous Halloween parade. And when I say world famous, I absolutely mean that. Isn't that correct, Tommy?
That is correct. It is world. It does have a worldwide audience. We've actually gotten phone calls from as far away as the Netherlands at PEG TV regarding the Halloween parade. So it does have a worldwide audience.
And am I correct in saying that the Halloween parade was once mentioned in a comic book? Am I correct?
More than once. It's been several mentions in, I think DC, but maybe Marvel too, because I know I actually own an issue of Batman that takes place at the Rolton City Halloween Parade.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and our
Batman,
very own Senator Patrick Leahy's been in a couple of different Batman movies, and
right?
so there's pretty big ties between him and the Halloween parade, and one of the biggest and best in the whole country.
Yeah, that's a good incentive to be famous, Jason. You can be in a movie, any movie that you want, you know?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks again for being here, and just wanted to let our viewers and listeners get another perspective about CP, and also to learn about this wonderful community that we live in. And I think
Absolutely.
that there's not another one like it, and I'm glad to be a part of it, and I'm glad that this whole broadcast thing for me started right here, and I'm glad that the people that I worked with were able to see past the disability and teach me the things I needed to know to be able to succeed and continue to move on.
Yeah, and we all miss Michael Valentine very much, but I don't think they could have found a better person to try and fill his shoes. So congratulations on that job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure talking to you too, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Definitely, we'll be here.
Absolutely. You polish up that shoe joke for me, and
I'll
we'll
work
have
on
you
that.
back. All right,
If you
man.
think of anything funny, let me know.
All righty. Hey, thank you.
You've been
Yeah,
listening
take
to
care.
Beyond the Label. It's a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities presented by Adaptive Martial Arts Association, the nation's leading resource and support network for the adaptive martial arts community. AdaptiveMartialArts.org, breaking barriers one move at a time. Thanks again, Tom Leypoldt,
You're
the
welcome.
executive director and stand-up comedian. We do appreciate you. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care.
All right. Jason, until next time.
All righty, buddy. Another one in the books, as I always tell you.
All
we'll
right.
talk to you soon. See
All
ya.
right. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Label. If you'd like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, email contact@adaptivemartialarts.org. Beyond the Label is produced by JD Production and presented by the Adaptive Martial Arts Association, the nation's leading resource and support network for the adaptive martial arts community. Check them out at adaptivemartialarts.org. Breaking barriers, one move at a time.